Jesse, and good evening, everyone, and welcome. I thank you all for coming here this evening at the Community Education Council District 25 Town Hall meeting with our special guest for the night, Chancellor Meisha Porter. Community Education Council 25 needs the voices of families. We need your guidance. And that is the reason we are so excited to host this town hall with the Chancellor. It is your time to be heard. We will get through as many questions as we can this evening. On behalf of the Community Education 25, we thank you for your attendance and dedication to all the students and families. Now, Jesse, is the Chancellor here? I see you. Welcome, Chancellor Meisha Porter.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So I'm going to continue on before I give you the opportunity to speak to our community. We would also like to welcome Deputy Chancellor Adrian Austin, Executive Superintendent Mabel Sardui, Superintendent Danielle Demango, Senior Director Jesse Mojica, as well as the District 25 office, our principals, APs, parent coordinators, teachers, members of FACE, and of course the parents, community officials, and our electeds, and the community at large, as we are all here this evening. It is a pleasure to have you with us at this much anticipated evening. District 25 is made up of a multiracial and culturally diverse community, which is also expressed in the makeup of our council. My name is Joseph De Benedetto, acting president. I would like to give you a brief introduction of our council members who are here this evening. Joining us here are First Vice President Christine Coniglio, a veteran member and PTA president of MS 379 in College Point, who also sits on the SLT Safety Committee for her school and an active member and parent leader in District 25 for more than 6 years. Next, our treasurer, Rashmi Krishnaraj, also active on the PTA and acting as co-president on President's Council, who likes to think of herself as the voice of the community, striving to shape policies that affect our children. Next, I present to you our acting secretary, Victor Lee, who has established a reputation of having and being the voice of the average student, falling between the high performers and those of special needs. His position this term had dealt with addressing the needs of the average student, which is often forgotten, and in search for ways to bring about improvement in their issues and their resulting grades. We have our parent members, Monica Patino, who understands that we have a diverse community, but the one thing we all have in common is that we want what's best for our children. She is often the voice of the Hispanic community and continues to fight for educational programs for all students, from pre-K to high school, to ensure that District 25 remains a leader in education. And then we have Edward Kim, who acknowledges that there is a diverse community, but understands that we have a hard-working, academically strong group of students who want to make sure that the community he represents is not put at the wayside. He understands the frustrations his constituent feels about being economically challenged, yet presented in a way that affects certain processes regarding high school admissions. And he wants to make things more efficient at District 25. We have Akila Osario, our IEP parent member, who was our strong voice for the IEP student and strive to educate the parents who oftentimes have a difficult time with the process encountered by those with IEPs. She was quite active this term in making sure parents knew what resources are available for the students with IEPs. We also have Lilik Wijayanti, our ELL parent member, who aligned herself with representing her community, be it in areas of special needs or the average student, and this past term has reported back to her community regarding constantly changing processes during the pandemic. We have two parent members who are also appointed, Brooke Sturgeon and Anne Marie Knabel, who by no means took any less than an active role in their responsibilities assigned to them by our borough president. Brooke, Anne Marie, Akila all sat on the special needs subcommittee and through this day strive to make permanent changes and improvements to the needs of those with particular special needs and services in our community. Myself, along with Christine, Rushmi, and Brooke, we all sit on the district leadership team as parent members, and we definitely would like to consider ourselves as being heard as an empowered group of members in this community. We all try to take an active role in shaping the district policy to the extent we are permitted to do so. District 25 is oftentimes referred to as somewhat being low-key and autonomous, but that by no means is a bad thing. We work very well with our district office. We have a wonderful superintendent who has always been accommodating to us with our concerns, and a wonderful executive superintendent who has always made her presence in District 25 known. We want you to know, Chancellor, that the relationships that we have allow us to work collaboratively in support of the students in our district. Our passion is centered around our children, their safety, and their ability to travel in an area which is not as accessible to mass transit when compared to the city at large, and the availability of the support to learn in a conducive environment to achieve academic excellence. As parent leaders, we work well with others, and pre-pandemic have formed and chaired many committees in our communities and did things for the benefit of our children. We work well as a team. We may not always agree, but we are very respectful of each other, and as a group, we work very well. This pandemic has brought about issues that we never really were surfaced beforehand, and that has put us that no one has ever anticipated. It made it apparent that the needs of students at all levels, and particularly at the forefront, those of special services, has surfaced in our community during these trying times. This CEC has never used the voices of others when it comes to voting on resolutions. We have always used our own voice. Just a few months ago, our CEC voted against signing a special needs petition that circulated to the city. But it wasn't for any reason other than not all the issues being involved in our district. However, we did not dismiss the needs of those with special needs. Rather, our special needs subcommittee fought to have our very own bylaws changed to bring about special services to our community and mandate that the public be presented with discussions about it during 2 separate calendar meetings each year to make sure awareness is presented as a matter of priority and the needs and issues be properly addressed. We are voting on this change to our bylaws at our very final meeting next month as a way of leaving our mark on the priorities in our community. I would like to highlight just a few of the main voices in the past that our district made in the city at large. The biggest being the free lunch for all students, which stems from a resolution originating in District 25. Then we have the resolution regarding the SHAZAT, Specialized High School Admissions Testing, and the resolution regarding school safeties. These both stemmed from issues that covered the city at large and many other districts, yet our district preferred to create its own resolution tailored to the voices of our own district. Again, another strong statement I feel was respected by the Department of Education and the community at large. Most recently, we voted on and approved our very own resolution this past November amidst citywide concern concerning the pandemic and the opt-in window for remote learning, which led to the district making a very strong statement in its vote of no confidence to our mayor and our chancellor regarding matters concerning clear communication, parent engagement, and parent voice. So as you meet us this evening, Chancellor, we hope you understand that we are a very serious group. When we ask you questions tonight, we ask that you address them in a serious and in an honest manner. By no means do we mean to be disrespectful. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to now introduce you, Chancellor Meisha Porter.
Thank you, President DiBenedetto. And first of all, my apologies for my delay, and I really appreciate your patience this evening. And as I had to go pay respects to a very dear, dear woman who was a real mentor in my life. I also am going to not take much time for comments from me, but just want to acknowledge one, the strength of this CEC, the diversity of the CEC, and the strong representation present in this CEC. And so I look forward to being in conversation with you, look forward to engaging very deeply with you. And I will just open the floor for questions, and I'm happy to stay on longer to make up for the time that we didn't have in the beginning. So thank you so much. Thank you, CEC 25. I know you have an amazing superintendent, Domingo, who I've had the honor and privilege of working with and watching for many, many years, and Executive Superintendent Sardui. And I look forward to us being strong partners together as we go forward.
Thank you, Chancellor, and our sincere condolences to you. We understand, and there's no need to apologize for being late, but we thank you for making it here this evening. Now, the council has collected questions from the public and will be asking these questions on their behalf. The questions and comments will be presented to you that stem from the parents in our community and the constituents we represent. We understand that our time during this town hall is very limited, so we may not be able to get to all of our community concerns, but we have tried to group the questions into categories to avoid the same questions being asked. In preparation for this evening, we have decided to move forward alphabetically with CEC member questions which come from the community. We will try to present you as many questions as time will allow. Okay, we will now take questions from the council, starting with Christine Coniglio.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Chancellor. Thank you for attending our meeting. It's always a pleasure to see a new Chancellor. So we welcome you to District 25 virtually. This question is going forward, come September and in the future, will all students be equipped to pivot to remote at any time necessary? How will DOE ensure that all students are provided the tools needed to go remotely at any time if we have another, God forbid, pandemic or another situation going forward?
Thank you, Christine, for your question. And I've heard that many a chancellor has got their start out in CEC 25. So it is my honor and privilege to be here as well. And so absolutely, you know, as we move forward out of the pandemic, we have learned so much about how to leverage remote learning as a tool for learning in our system. And so as you all know, we've gotten over 500,000 devices into the hands of our students to support remote learning. But as we go forward, my vision is that we leverage remote learning as a way to move our system forward. Not just that we sit in this moment, but that we look at it as an innovation for our system. How do we provide students access to high-level courses across our system? How do we break down barriers? But also, how do we ensure that in the event of another pandemic, God willing, we won't have to deal with that, but that we are prepared, our students, our schools, and our staff members are prepared to we never miss a moment's learning. I have to give the prior administration great credit quickly. And what we look forward to doing going forward is to building on that practice and looking at remote learning as an innovative practice in our system that you can use not only to, you know, replace learning in such time as this, but also to build access.
Chancellor, you're muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear the full response?
Yes,
to the question?
yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay.
I thank you.
Yes.
So I have it's actually a two-part question. So this is my second part. So I know you were not at the helm at the time, but one serious concern throughout the process was the lack of parent input in the decision-making process. Through the pandemic, DOE has stated on various subjects, we spoke to the parents. I have attended CPAC meetings where it was brought up and no one actually knew what group of parents were surveyed for a particular matter. I have thought about this a lot, being involved in many levels of parent leadership. And I would like to suggest one true parent advisory group where the chancellor meets with right now the chancellor meets with CPACs, ECC, students, UFTs, principals, etc. Why not create one group, especially now that we are virtual, where everyone is at the table at the same time? Have each school district send a few constituent groups, a PTA rep, a CEC rep, a student rep, an IEP parent, etc. Maybe 5 or 6 from each group, from each district, where everybody sits, collaborates, and hears at the same time exactly what is happening within the DOE, so that there's transparency and we could be more productive in making sure that everybody's thought about in the thought process. Thank you.
You, Christine, and I promise you all I'm going to be 100% present and stable in 2 minutes. So I will start by saying thank you for that recommendation. And I know our Deputy Chancellor, Adrian Austin, is on the call who can speak to the structures. But I do hear the request around making sure that there are representative bodies that have one conversation, as opposed to many, many conversations where parents can't figure out, well, when was this communication? When did this happen? When did that happen? And so I definitely understand your request. I know some of the committees are bound by Chancellor's regulations. Oh, sorry, I'm here. And I'm just gonna ask Deputy Chancellor Austin to talk a little bit about the parent body structures, because I'll tell you, I've been asking some of those questions myself, just because for me, I really want to be sure that as we make decisions across the city, that I'm leaning into the representative bodies in a very real and intentional way. And that's important to me, not only as the chancellor, not only as an educator, but also as a parent of a New York City public school student, that we're really leaning into our parent elected bodies to ensure that we have the people at the table who have been elected and selected to making decisions. And so, Deputy Chancellor Austin, can you chime in on that as well, please? Is she here? If she's not here, if someone from Facebook.
No, Chancellor, but I can jump in. Yes,
Thank
absolutely. Our Deputy Chancellor was unable to make our town hall this evening due to a conflict, but just with regards to the structures, Christine, to your question, I think that the balance is that there are certain structures that are mandated within the law and in the regulation. And the reason for that is to ensure one, district representation, local representation, as well as citywide representation. So the balance would be in creating like a structure that combines all of those, is in a sense not to lose the local representation that these structures, are designed to accomplish, and rightfully so that district issues are not lost, that in particular when we have citywide councils that focus on a particular student population, like Citywide Council on English Language Learners, Citywide Council on Special Education, that their representation is heard, just as equally as any other council. So I think that the balance is that in premise, we do agree, and the Chancellor does meet with all of these groups individually and as a larger conversation. I know that many of the groups already kind of organically do converse, and there are members who are multiple members of different councils. I would say that we are always striving to have, collaboration amongst all these respective bodies. But there are particular mandates in the law that, in a sense, creates a particular body for a particular purpose, and the balance of that is that not to disrupt the original purpose of that, but in that purpose kind of expand and ensure that all of these respective bodies are working more collaboratively with one another. And we have seen examples of that in the sense of past resolutions where a respective body will pass a resolution and you'll see a separate body also, in another district, in another borough, in support and in solidarity also get behind that resolution. So it is something that we're going to continue to work closely with all of our respective, parent bodies. And but there are, very specific mandates within the law that kind of, focuses us to have this respective body and and in a sense, not, ensure that that respective body's mission and purpose is in a sense not disrupted, or in a sense not lost in a larger conversation, if that made sense, Christine. Christine, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, it does make sense, Jesse. I understand, but I think I'm not saying to take away from those groups. It's more to bring everybody together.
Understood. Yeah.
Where everybody can, because a lot of times it becomes like the game telephone. At one meeting, somebody says something, and then the next day there's another meeting and it's interpreted wrong. We all know things could be interpreted differently. And then it kind of gets distorted as it goes down the line. So my thought process is just kind of put, not taking away from those other bodies, still having a CPAC meeting and an ECC, but really create one group where everybody's at the table, so that when the chancellor or face does speak, everybody's hearing the same thing at the same time. And if they have questions, then they could go back to their constituents group. That was just my thought process on the whole concept of it.
Thank you.
Christine. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Chancellor. Going to move to the next question. Christine, you're done, right? We're done with your question? Okay. So only because I am next alphabetically will I ask the next question. Chancellor, the DOE recently announced changes to the school calendar, which included the renaming of Columbus Day, which in New York has become commonly known as Italian Heritage Day. They changed the name to Indigenous Peoples Day to celebrate and honor Native American people and their culture. There was no discussion about the protocol used in making this change, but the very next day, an updated announcement was made that the two cultural celebrations will be merged, and the DOE renamed the holiday Italian Heritage / Indigenous Peoples Day. Again, no discussion was made about the protocol on this decision, and led to confusion about who was consulted, what conversations took place, what, if anything, was debated regarding the effects of the change, and who ultimately made that decision. Many in our community have asked, why can't you have Indigenous Peoples Day as a separate and distinct holiday? There is nothing wrong with celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, but why merge it with the Italian Heritage Day, which has become known as the spirit of Italian American culture in New York for generations? To cancel or diminish the celebration of one culture at the expense of another is certainly a difficult and complex conversation. What is the process when a change like this is made? Who is notified? And who approves the change? Parent engagement and parent empowerment are often encouraged by the DOE. We put all this energy at the CEC level. How is the CEC not involved in that process? Isn't this the exact sort of thing that the CEC should be discussed? If not, wouldn't it be something that CEC would at least be consulted on before making the announcement? So what I'm asking, Chancellor, is I would like to understand the process or the procedure regarding the two recent announcements. First, the name change, and secondly, 24 hours later, the renaming it to the Italian Heritage Indigenous Peoples Day. Can you explain the process of what went on behind the scenes in making such a decision? Because this resulted in a change of a cultural celebration and a permanent change to our school calendar.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have a bad connection, if it's me or if it's the Chancellor's office.
Chancellor, I believe you're frozen.
Yeah, it's me too, Joe. She's frozen on my end too.
It's still breaking up,
Can you hear me
Chancellor.
now? Can you hear me
We
now?
can hear you now.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me just plug in also. I'm 100% stable and on the right network and everything now. So again, my apologies. So first of all, let me just say, it is never my way to make such an important decision, such an impactful decision without going through a process of engagement. And I know that was a very sensitive change and required consultation. The calendar process was in process before I became chancellor. And the change was made, the conversations began before. And so where we are now is we are making sure that any significant changes to our calendar or any other significant changes, particularly that affect any community, any culture, because it is important that we acknowledge and lift up all of the cultures that are represented across our city, that we engage in a very clear process. And that includes with our CEC members, that includes our President's Council, that includes our school communities. I take very seriously a change that makes any community feel disrespected, dishonored, and just, it definitely raises up some real issues and concerns. And I'm aware of that, which is why we were sure to make sure that, we honored Italian Americans. I'm happy to engage in a conversation going forward about next year's calendar. And again, to just make sure, and just please know my way is never, it's what I've said since I became chancellor, that what is important to me is to be in conversation with communities, to engage communities, and to be collaborative with communities as we make decisions. Doesn't mean we always agree, but I think what's most important is that we have conversations so we understand the why. So, look forward to discussing further. Absolutely.
Thank you, Chancellor. The next question is for Anne Marie Knable.
Hi, thank you. Welcome, Chancellor Porter. My question has two parts. The first part is with the vaccination age lowering, will it become a required vaccine like the chickenpox and measles for school children to have to go to school? And with that, will the testing continue in schools?
So the testing will absolutely continue in schools. We are always going to follow the health and safety recommendations of our healthcare providers and our doctors. And, as far as requiring vaccines, we're not at that place yet, but we continue to encourage all of our families, our students. We are so excited by the change that we can now have 12-year-olds vaccinated. And so we will continue to encourage our families to get their children vaccinated. We'll work to create access and education in our schools to vaccinations, but we're not at the point yet where we are requiring that. That's not something that's happening across our city and our country. We also understand the sensitivity of this moment. This is a new vaccine that people still have a lot of questions about. And so we want to just work with the medical professionals to, one, continue to make recommendations and provide education and access to vaccines across the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Edward Kim, you ready?
Yes, I am. Hello, Chancellor. How are you?
I'm well.
Hope we could have met on better circumstances, but I guess the show must go on, as they say, right? So I've been reading about why the DOE is concerned about equity regarding the entrance exams to these specialized schools. And it looks like most of the arguments stem from concerns that low-income families are at a disadvantage because they're not able to afford test prep for these exams or so forth. Is that the reasoning behind the DOE wanting to get rid of these exams? And if so, what criteria would you put in place for entrance to these exams? The only reason I'm asking is because the data that I've researched was, it places Asians at a 25% poverty rate in New York City, which is the highest of all ethnic backgrounds. But yet they're representing, the majority of the students entering these exams. So I'm just wondering, if they're at the most economically challenged group, I would say, it just doesn't seem to add up. So, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, but yeah. So is this the reasoning behind the getting rid of the exams, and what criteria are you looking to replace?
So, the Shazat is the Shazat as an entry exam for specialized high schools is a state law. My position is that there should never be one single measure that determines a student's future, a student's access to high school. That doesn't happen at the college level, and it doesn't happen across most schools in New York City. And so that's my basic position. There should not be one measure. I also think it's important for us to go through a process of engaging with what the policy for admissions into specialized high schools should look like, what those multiple measures should look like, what they should include. And my vision is, similar to, admissions to colleges that include multiple measures. An exam, it could be one of them, but it just shouldn't be the only one.
Just yeah, so as colleges also based upon majority of it on the SAT scores themselves. Obviously, I don't believe in just one exam for an 8th grader to determine whether they get in or is warranted. But on the flip side to that, it's also saying so for example, if so would LaGuardia High School, let's just say. LaGuardia High School has 2,800 students, 45% are white and 20% are Hispanic, 70% Asian, 10% Black students, right? So, I mean, so they're based upon like an audition, right? So essentially, so would that be considered something different than taking, because it's based upon a one audition kind of make it or break it, did Simon Cowell hit the button and say, no, I don't like you, and then get out of here?
We don't put Simon at any of our auditions.
Right,
no,
exactly.
I hear you,
Yes.
and I think it is a really important question. And what I would say similar, this year we opened up auditions to all of our audition high schools, and they were virtual. And so there wasn't a barrier to even get into auditions. And so I think we just have to think about the ways our system creates barriers to any group of students to have an opportunity or access. And what you will always hear from me is, how do we create more opportunities and access for all of our students?
Okay, so essentially so you're not, so your position would be the exam and something else, right? Other criteria.
My position would be the exam and something else, and that we engage in a process with the community that we decide what that something else is. It should not be up to me. It should not be left up to one person or one system. It should be a process that we engage in collaboratively across our system. And I think that the feelings, and I hear a lot of feelings in your question. You got good data, but I also hear a lot of feelings. And I think that those feelings come from people not feeling engaged. To Christine's questions, people not feeling like they were at the table, folks feeling like they weren't. It's the same thing to Mr. DiBenedetto's questions, folks feeling like they weren't at the table for the conversation. And that's what I think is really important.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Chancellor. Next, we have Rashmi Krishnaraj.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, Chancellor. This is Rashmi. How are you?
How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. So yes, my name is Rashmi. So you can rush me, but I'm not going to rush you. Okay, so my question involves around policies, around social aspects of students, and how 1 year has taught us to think outside the box, like how we are trying to think different avenues to do different things. So this question comes, I'm going to just read it out loud, and then the field trips are on hold indefinitely due to the pandemic. Is the Department of Education looking to create or find resources that represent opportunities for children to engage in alternative learning experiences in the classroom or away from the screens? That is for this academic year, whatever is the remaining part, and definitely for going forward to next academic year, because kids have not had any break since they started. And I know some of these policies are beyond New York City DOE realm, but this is for us to start looking out of the box, because in the end, we are talking about our kids, our future of our society, and we can't have one policy that was okay last year would be the same this year. So we all know that the New York City our school system started a couple of weeks later, but that should not take away from kids having that break and getting that refresher, even if they're remote or in person. So that's my.
So yeah, thank you, Rashmi, and I won't rush you either. I promise. I look forward to being in conversation with you and the entire CEC 25. So listen, I think the thing I miss most are field trips, and I miss them for our students. And I can say that many of our cultural institutions and partners have been really wonderful about creating remote experiences for our students. But all of us parents on here know, that opportunity to get out and actually get into the museum and get under the whale and sit under it and look at its belly, nothing replaces that. And so, I'm going to do my push for summarizing, which I didn't get an opportunity to talk about, which I think is so important this summer, an opportunity to build a bridge back to school. And all of us know there was loss that all of our students experienced. And so summarizing is access and opportunity to all students, grades K-12, to have access to summer enrichment, trips, academics, and most importantly, fun. Reconnecting to school in a way that is fun, enriching, and exciting for them. And so, we will be offering trips for the summer and also looking at our trip policy going forward. Obviously, the trip policy was changed because we had to keep our babies safe. We had to keep all of our children safe. And that was the first priority. But we know they miss trips and we want to bring them back. And we're really working with our arts partners who are so excited to bring the arts back to life, to bring Broadway back, and to get young people back in theaters, young people back in the museums, young people back in our zoos, and young people back in our cultural institutions. And so really looking forward to bring them back. And we will definitely be partnering with our cultural institutions across New York City. It is the beauty of New York City, the access that we have to so many cultural institutions as really an extension of learning for our students. So looking forward to doing that.
Thank you. Just a small note on that. Is there anything that your administrators are talking for this current academic year? Is there anything that you guys are thinking about giving these kids a break from? When we say field trip, we don't mean the actual field trip going in the park, which will be great, but just to turn off the computer and say, okay, today your job will be to look around your apartment and write about something and bring the report tomorrow, take a break from that academic every day.
I'll tell you, my hope is that we can get every student back in school, because nothing replaces the interaction, but there's no device in the world that replaces the interaction between a teacher and a student in a classroom. And what we learned, and all of us, we're not gonna call out ages, but we're probably in the same range-ish. I'm going to say,
of course, we both are 21 legal.
Exactly, range-ish. But I talk a lot about when we were students, people were talking about creating the 21st century classroom. And we thought it meant a computer lab. And then we thought it meant smart boards. And then we thought it meant laptop carts. And then we thought it meant iPads. And then all of a sudden, that device became the learning tool. And so now we have the opportunity to take that learning tool, bridge the expertise with a phenomenal teacher, and really bring learning to life in a different way, but not like this, right? Like what we are now, not just spending days and hours sitting with a device, but really creating opportunities to leverage the device, but leverage the adult interactions to really build amazing learning and innovative learning experiences for our students going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you, Chancellor. Next, we have Victor Lee.
Thank you, Joe. Welcome, Chancellor Porter, to District 25. My name is Victor Lee, and my question is in two category, actually. So the first category deal with bus and transportation, and there are a couple of additional sub-questions underneath it as well. So since other states or county already have school buses for K-12 students, we should review this DOE service. The modified DOE bus service can benefit many families who want their children to be safe from public transportation and street crime, as well as to minimize commuting hardship where schools are not accessible by direct public transportation within reasonable distance utilized during normal school and after school hours. That's the reference information. Now, my question is, are there any reason preventing us from modifying our school bus contract to include students from grade 6 to 12?
So, I mean, we would have to go back and look for that. I was looking to see if Kevin Moran, who's our in charge of busing and facilities, was on, but he's not on. You know, New York City is a hard place to have the amount of buses that it would require to move all of our students across the city. But what I hear again, Mr. Lee, is just a concern for the safety of our young people. And it's something we really need to be concerned about, particularly in this moment, particularly our AAPI students and you know, families and their concern for their safety in this moment. And so I'll get back to you on the busing question. I don't think it is that easy, but what I will say to you is we will continue to partner with NYPD to make sure that we're creating safe passages and safe ways for our students to get back and forth to school, and acknowledge this moment that our AAPI families really have deep concern about the safety of their children and each other.
That's great. The follow-up question to that is, how can we create a board with parent members to conduct oversight for the increase and modified transportation service if it does happen?
Mm-hmm. Again, you know, let me talk to Kevin Moran and team. We also, you know, we're working on Nice Bus, and we're working to build an app so parents can track the bus services and track where their students are. And so more to come. Happy to come back to CEC 25 with more information about busing, and to bring Kevin with me, who can answer those questions more specifically than I can.
That's great. This question is not related to the above, but it's similar in category from the community. They want to know, are bus staff being tested for COVID?
I honestly would not know, because I am only responsible for testing in the schools. And we are doing massive testing in our schools. I don't know what's happening at bus stops.
That's great. The last question in this category is, what are the guidelines for parents who have bus issues when OPT directs parents back to schools under pandemic changes?
So they should contact their principal. They should contact OPT directly. But I would start with the principals, because they have a direct connect at each borough office. And I know Exec Soup Sardui is on here, and Superintendent Domingo on here. If there's a particular issue in a school, you should contact your school directly, or the superintendent's office, because at the borough office, we have a transportation liaison who deals with transportation issues. And Exec Soup Sardui, I don't know if you, Superintendent Domingo, want to add anything to that?
Nothing to add, exactly that. If a particular family has trouble with busing, we do have a liaison. You can reach out to me, and I'll make sure that the support will be provided for the family.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Thank you. The second category that I'm asking on behalf of the community is, again, with the recent incident at Rico Park and Hell's Kitchen, we are reminded to address the emotional impact of the individual wearing a mask and the disciplinary action for those who are targeting these individuals. Individuals, staff, or students should not feel unsafe or different about choosing to wear a mask. Moreover, individuals who are wearing a mask can be targeted for harassment, bullying, or assault as mask wearing becomes an option. My question is, what action will you implement to make choosing to wear a mask feel safe from bullying, harassment, or assault for students and staff?
So I can tell you that at this moment, we continue to require masking in our schools. When I'm in the office, I'm in masks. And, you know, it's very clear our rules and expectations around masking in our schools. I expect, and, you know, I hear you, Mr. Lee, there are mixed feelings about masking. We all come home and we take it off like, but the fact is, it's keeping our community safe. And so at this moment, we will still require masking in September, because we want to do every single thing that we can to keep our community safe. And as far as targeting any group of students, you know, we don't tolerate any level of hate, racism, or bias attacks against any group or any of our students or faculty members. For me, for us, for our system, masking at this moment is a health precaution. It is to keep our community safe. We don't walk around with a vaccine, badge on. We walk around and we have to operate in good faith that people who are not vaccinated are unmasked, and people who are vaccinated, people who are unvaccinated are masked, and people who are vaccinated are unmasked. But that is not, we don't have space for that in our schools. We have too many people. And what is our priority is getting people back in, getting them safely. And so to do that, we have to continue to maintain masking.
The community, thank you for that. And there's two more questions of this category. Second question is, what disciplinary action are used to hold the individual accountable for their action? That's something along what you just saying before.
Yep. So we have our NYC DOE School Code of Conduct, and the discipline code outlines the steps to take when it comes to bullying, bias. And so there are a number of steps that start with parent communication, mediation. We work really hard to bring down the suspension rate, but they go all the way up to suspensions. And so there's a range of interventions whenever there is a, any action that goes against our code of conduct.
The last question you might have answered previously, but here it is. What partnership do we have with NYPD to assist individuals who have been targeted by harassment, bullying, or assault?
Yeah, we have ongoing partnerships with NYPD. We are in regular communication. When we opened our high schools, we reached out to NYPD because we wanted to make sure we had a number of superintendents and districts who reached out to us and were concerned about their AAPI students coming to school. And we reached out to NYPD to create a safe passage and to be more visible and available. And so, we are hand in hand with NYPD. I think the pandemic that has taught us as a city is that we really need to be in partnership across agencies in deeper ways to really protect our young people.
Thank you, Chancellor Porter. The community welcomes you to District 25.
Thank Mr. Lee. That was like the SAT exam.
Maybe. I think it's a little bit easier.
Thank you, Chancellor. I next present to you Monica Patino. Monica, you're next.
Hi, Chancellor Porter. Thank you for being here. I promise you I'll be quick. Okay, so my first question is, all students, especially those with IEPs, have been affected by the shift to remote learning. Teachers and related services provided, despite their best effort, often were unable to fully implement the IEP. What plans do you have to mitigate the impact on social, emotional, and academic learning? In addition, if remote learning is offered for parents in September, what plans do you have to ensure remote students with IEPs and all students receive high quality education in the upcoming school year?
So we're going to continue to really work to ground our work in schools in rigorous academics combined with social emotional support. I've said over and over again, the path forward to reopening school is building social emotional academic integration grounded in CRSE, grounded in our students seeing themselves represented in the curriculum. The summer is going to be a great opportunity for families to begin to get a head start on that. But I hear you about ensuring that our IEP students are receiving the high quality education that they deserve as well. And so we're laser focused on having a summer program that not only is bigger and bolder than it's been in years past, but also that we are targeting different populations of students. And again, moving away from the deficit-based thinking about summer school to really how do we leverage the summer to build our brain muscle back, our school muscle back, and reconnect our students both socially and emotionally to their schools. And we also are going to have very specific supports for our English language learners and our students with disabilities this summer. And so we look forward to working very closely with our school communities to make sure that we are centering our most vulnerable learners. We are essentially funding IEP teachers to serve in 960 schools, going to be providing literacy-based interventions in our summer programs. And we also prioritize our students with IEPs for devices when we first started to get devices out into the hands. And so there's still work to do. We will continue to do it, but we know how important this summer is going to be as the bridge back to school.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. Will remote learning continue to be offered for families that are not yet comfortable enough to send their kids back to school for 2021-2022 school year if school reopens full time?
Yeah. Monica, I have to really be honest about my biases. My biases is that we get all of our babies back in school because I don't think anything replaces the interaction between a teacher and a student in a classroom. However, we are going to be guided by health and safety. And so I will not say that remote is not on the table. I told you my little hope and my miniature bias, but I do believe it's important that we are following the science, following the health and safety, and making sure we can accommodate all of our students and making sure there isn't a medical necessity, which there may be for some families, to continue with some level of remote instruction.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Chancellor. I present to you now Brooke Sturgeon.
Hi, Chancellor. Thank you for being with us. I have 3 questions. My first one kind of goes off of what Monica was saying. What resources and training have been provided to schools to make remote learning more accessible to students with disabilities and our English learners?
So a number of things have been offered to our schools, we have been providing training to teachers to leverage the remote tools. We've been providing assessments to our students so teachers could monitor instruction. But again, nothing replaces that interaction between a student and a teacher in a classroom. And that's why I'm really pushing us forward. However, when I think about remote learning going forward in our system, what I really think about it as is a real innovation. How do we create access to high-level courses? How do we create access to enrichment activities? How do we create access to interventions that might be available in one school but not in other schools? And so I'm really leaning into remote learning to support our system growing innovatively as we move forward, but also thinking about the ways that we need to continue to build our teachers' muscles in remote learning, because one of the first questions I was asked was around, how are we going to make sure that if we ever end up back in this place that we do it well?
Thank you. My next is, how does the DOE intend to assess losses of skills, therapies, and academics among our special ed students as a result of remote learning?
So as soon as the pandemic started, our priority was, again, the health and safety of every student, but also that we continue to deliver a high quality education. We were the first major district to offer in-person special education services to our students. And, again, those centrally funded IEP teachers were serving and supporting 960 schools. We also worked with parents to develop, the PADS, the program adaptation document, to adjust students' IEPs in service of ensuring they receive the services they need in a remote land. But again, we're going to continue to build our muscles and provide access to additional resources, leveraging not only our current, I'm really excited about the 100% fair student funding that we're going to be able to provide to all of our schools, but also leveraging those stimulus dollars to begin to close the gap that was created by COVID.
Thank you. My last is, how is the DOE maintaining consistent and fidelity tested assessments of our children?
And Brooke, when you talk about testing, are you talking about state testing or,
I think overall, amongst them completely with the remote and to keep them on track.
Yeah. So I think our biggest thing that we've been leaning into is how are we assessing students for learning, and how are we assessing where they are so we can leverage that information to inform the instructional decisions our teachers are making in classrooms. You know, the state exam was what it was this year, and we will use that as information. But similar to the question I was asked by around the Shizat, I believe the same thing about the state exam. We can't use a single measure to make a decision, and we need to provide ongoing assessments of our students' learning so we can make the best decisions about how to move forward and how to, you know, serve them better, how to build up their academic skills, and, you know, how to improve teaching and learning across our schools.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Understood. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Chancellor. We're going to continue with some other questions from the community, and I'm going to bring back on Monica. You're next with the next question. Are you there? You have it?
Yes. Okay. How effective was changing the G&T application process in creating equality for all? What would the G&T process look like next year?
Mm-hmm. So again, the G&T process this year was grounded in teacher recommendations. You know, we didn't have the single exam as the way to admit students into G&T. And so we decided to leverage an alternate measure, and that was to allow parents to apply and teachers to make recommendations. I will say to you, Monica, my commitment is to, again, to engage in a process where we talk with families and communities about how we need to revise the admissions process to G&T. And that's something we look forward to starting this summer. You know, I know there are a lot of questions about, you know, the two big questions are Shizat and G&T as it relates to admissions. And again, I think what's most important is that we have an engagement process around it. And we think about, again, what are the ways that we provide opportunities and access to those programs. I also think this. We have an abundance of resources in this moment, one that I, as an educator, have never seen this system have. And so I'm looking forward to how we are leveraging those resources to build more enrichment opportunities across schools. My goal is to build a system where every family in every community has a school that they can feel proud to send their child to, that has all of the resources, supports, enrichment activities, arts programming, STEM activities. So every school in our city is a great school.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Rashmi. You have the next question. You see it?
Yes, I have it. Thank you, Joe. Hi, Rashmi is back. So my next question, this is from the public. What is the DOE proposal to fix scheduling in schools that are campus schools and have to share cafeteria, meaning lunch periods that can start for some student as early as 9:30 a.m. and for some as late as 1:20 p.m. During the pandemic, lunchrooms and gyms have been used as a temporary classrooms. What is the plan for that with more and more students coming back in this next academic year?
So we're going to have to really build more collaborative practices. And also, you know, we were creative. We had outdoor lunches, we had, you know, outdoor classrooms. But I think that what's most important as a former principal who had to share space with another school and had to share cafeteria space, that we are not, that we are really thinking about all of our students as ours and not, you know, how do we kind of hoard, for lack of a better word, space and give other schools, you know, kind of the whatever is left over. How do we create a more collaborative schedule where we work together? And I think, you know, when we partner across schools, we do better and we provide more resources and access to opportunities. And so I would say that we look to work more closely with building councils to create more collaborative programming so that nobody has to have a 9 o'clock lunch and nobody has to wait till 1 o'clock to eat. Because, you know, high schoolers, that is a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anne Marie?
Hi. My next question is, many schools face budget cuts because of enrollment dropping. If there are budget cuts, where will you cut? And do you think this is fair under the current circumstances?
Anne Marie, I don't think it's fair, which is why I'm so glad that one of the first things we were able to do was to eliminate the cuts to budgets based on register as a result of COVID. You know, I think that we have access. Again, we have resources that we have never had before in this system. And so we have an opportunity to really fund schools equitably and really think about who needs what, so that no school is lacking. No school has to give up their art teacher because their enrollment dropped. No school has to give up their STEM program because nobody has to give up their robotics program. Every student deserves access to those amazing enrichment activities. And I think we have a moment where we have resources that we can make that happen for schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. Christine, you're on next.
Hi, I'm back. I actually have two questions. The first one comes from a current 8th grade student in our community. And it says Northeast Queens high schools are very overcrowded. We have limited public transportation and not enough easily accessible choices for us to make for high schools. Recently, a Catholic high school closed in College Point and 2 Catholic elementary schools closed in Whitestone. Would you please look into making a high school on this side of Queens so children do not have to travel so far to get to high school?
Tell that 8th grader, as a person who grew up in Queens, I know the transportation struggles. 2 buses and a train to get anywhere, right? So we will definitely look into, I will work with our facilities team to see where we are in the 5-year plan for that side of Queens. But you know, no one understands it better than us Queens folks, the transportation problems. And you know, I took 2 buses to middle school, a bus and 3 trains to high school, and all in Queens. So I get it.
I think I could beat you with that. My son is actually expecting to go to, we don't know yet, we're waiting on high school results, but he will be taking a bus, 2 trains, and a ferry if he gets into the school he wants.
I would have loved to have a ferry to take, Christine, I'm telling you.
Okay, so my next question is traffic safety is a major concern around our district. And I am aware that DOE has no control over the traffic issues, but currently we have been told that crossing guards are not a priority for middle school students. Middle school students walk to school themselves. Kindergarten have parents walking them. I am personally requesting that you look into this. Many middle schools in our district are in desperate need of crossing guards and/or stop signs. The safety of our children getting to school should be our utmost priority.
Yeah, I will definitely look into it. And, you know, I have to say our crossing guards have been a group of our unsung heroes in this pandemic. They've been out there every single day, making sure the students that were going to school got there safe, or students who were families who were going to pick up meals got there safely. And, you know, they definitely have been the unsung heroes of this pandemic. And I'm happy to look into that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
President
Christine.
Benedetto, I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, sir.
No problem.
We probably have an opportunity for one more question.
Sure. So Victor is next. Victor, you
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'll make mine quick so you can get yours in too, Joe.
It's okay.
What will you do, Chancellor Porter, what will you do to create and expand arts and music in the school?
Mr. Lee, that's my favorite question. I'm the mother of a dancer who went to Frank Sinatra in Queens in Astoria and traveled the opposite way, a bus and 3 trains from the Bronx to Astoria to get there. And again, we have an amazing opportunity in this moment. We have resources that we haven't had, and we really want to encourage and push our schools to make sure we are bringing the arts back into places where they don't exist and expanding them where they do. I think it is so important. And I will continue to be a strong advocate for the arts, because I think that they create an outlet for students to express themselves, you know, to show their creativity. And it's just a different way of learning. And I know it very well as the mother of an artist.
Thank you. I agree.
Thank you. And I don't know if this might be the appropriate question to finish the evening. Do I have time for it?
Go for
Yes,
it.
sir.
You guys were so patient with me.
Thank you, Chancellor. So we ask you, what advice do you give CECs to increase parent involvement?
So I don't know how much advice this CEC needs. This seems like a very active CEC and a very involved and engaged CEC. But I'll tell you the thing I thought about when I first became a superintendent in the Bronx in District 11 was, you know, that our CEC members, and I bet this advice is going to fall on deaf ears because y'all probably do this already, but that our CEC members are in our schools, that they are meeting our families, that our families know actually the power of the CEC. Because one of the things I found was parents didn't really realize the power of the CEC, the decisions the CEC made, and how important it was to be present at those CEC meetings. And so one of the things that I did was I required that every school, whether it was the PA president, vice president, member of the executive board, or the parent coordinator, was represented at every CEC meeting so that they could bring back to their school community the information that was coming up at the CEC. What I found was sometimes parents would only show up to the CEC because something was happening at their school that they heard. If we go to the CEC, that's where it happens. And we, you know, I believe in parent empowerment. I believe in engaged parents. And I think knowing the role of the CEC, engaging with the CEC as a part of your regular activity as a parent is important. And I think that happens when CEC members are connected to their schools.
That was a wonderful answer, Chancellor. That's
Well,
something that our CEC believes in.
I
and
hope
that's
I
why-
passed the CEC 25 test.
And that's why we appreciate your engagement with us this evening.
Thank
So
you.
I think we don't have enough time for any more questions, Jesse, right? We're good.
So President DiBenedetto, at this point, I turn it over to you for closing remarks.
Sure. So once again, we thank you for joining us this evening, Chancellor Porter. I understand from what you're telling us that there are certain things that we really still need some engagement in, and certain policies. And we hope, whether we're here or not the next term, but we hope that those that are on the CEC can continue in the journey that we've been making, and we can follow up on the concerns that we brought to you this evening, because it seems like there are some unanswered questions that we really need to follow up on. So we thank you for your time. We thank you for your honesty. And again, we give you our condolences for your loss.
Thank you. And I hope to see you all, though I'm sure I will, at our Queens Town Hall. I hope to see you all there.
Yes, we look forward to seeing you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night. And again, thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.